Hello and welcome to the Warp Shelf. I'm Frank Duran.
I'm Deshaun Vasquez.
And today we are two artists reaching into the pile of...
Today it's movies, but oftentimes it can be movies, it can be TV shows, it can be books sometimes, comics, any sort of art form that moves you, something that's worth taking with you, whether that's, putting on the proverbial warped shelf or the literal one.
And today we're talking spookies. We're talking horror. We're in October. And you know what that means. We're deep in horror movies. Me and Deshaun both have different watching a movie every day at least for every day of October for horror movies, and it's just and Deshaun goes way harder, maybe up to 5 movies, but
it's in batches. It's not like an everyday thing. I still try to equal around 25 to 30-ish movies for the month, at least for the buddy watches, but I'm also watching just more than that on my own.
We are, we always have a yearly special or something like that. And, this might not be the Halloween episode, but it's Halloween themed. Because we're in the middle of the month. So today we're talking about Creepshow and Trick or Treat.
Yes.
Now, why those two? Why these two movies?
Well, in my mind, they're the two best horror anthologies, at least that I've seen. Anytime that horror anthologies come up, which is a hard thing to do, because, we're talking separate stories, all sometimes linked together, sometimes not, sometimes with multiple filmmakers, sometimes with one vision. And oftentimes, because it's separate stories, you sort of end up with this one hits, this one not so much.
Yes.
These are the two where I feel like all of the stories are good, or at least the very least most consistent.
And I think it's also important to talk about because this might be a dying art of a genre of film, because I feel like the horror anthology it still happens. We have things as soon as All Hallows Eve, that's 2019, I want to say, and there is horror anthologies that come out, but it's definitely one of those things where they're starting to transition to be TV shows.
Primarily. Even Creepshow, which is a TV show on Shudder now.
Yeah, and it makes sense, that's the format, these little bite-sized stories that, sometimes connect, sometimes don't, does make sense more for TV.
Yeah.
But I think that there's some
It's also easier to forgive, too.
Yes.
If a story doesn't hit. When it's part of a movie, you're like, that kind of drags the whole project down. You get a stinker on a TV show. You're like, well, maybe next week's will be good.
Yes. And I think that's what makes it so a high risk, high reward with a motion picture one, is that all these horror movies have to hit. Horror shorts have to hit, they have to work together to create this general feeling of what they're going for, be it Creepshow's kind of love of horror, but also being kind of totally camp and totally in love with its what's happening,
but also in love with a specific lens of horror, which is comics. This is basically an unofficial EC Comics adaptation. It's a throwback to the actual Tales from the Crypt comic and Vault of Horror, etc. All those old genre prevalent horror books that used to be the biggest game in town as far as comic books were concerned before the Comics Code Authority was just no, it's horror. It's exactly as the dad does at the beginning. But then you have Trick or Treat's kind of brand of horror comedy sort of going on there, which is much different than what Creepshow is kind of going for with its. Creepshow's comedic too, but in a different way.
Yes, I wouldn't say it's horror comedy because I think it's trying to be satirical at moments, and that's why that's the way it is. But yes, it's it's kind of that they have these different feels to them that a TV show can't get across as well. you know, like, and you know, like, and that's what's interesting about these is that like it's such a high risk reward to do that one motion picture, that one united vision, and see what comes out of the 5, you know, like, or 6 stories, whatever, however many stories you have in these. I do think that, you know, I think it's important to point out that I feel like Twilight Zone walked so these movies could run, but it's funny because Creepshow walked so Twilight Zone the movie could happen. You know, like it kind of proved the formula for the box office. Creepshow made a lot of money. It came out so for Halloween that year, it was Halloween 3 coming out. So that came out a little bit before Halloween, and they kind of knew the people would be still into the spookies, so they dropped Creepshow in November. And that way, it kind of like ate up the rest of the year popularity wise. And
it would also be a pretty good palate cleanser because Halloween 3, if you've never seen it, you should. It's underrated. Put the fact that Michael Myers is not in it out of your mind. You just treat it as an individual film. It's very good. But it's also very fucking bleak.
Yeah. It's like I still haven't watched it. That is kind of crazy. It's like one of those things.
I only own 2 Halloween movies on my shelf, and it's the first one and the third one.
Wow, that's crazy. That is crazy. Because I mean, I'm a big Rob Zombie Halloween guy.
I do have a soft spot for the Rob Zombie one. I just haven't like gone out of my way for it yet. But it's not one that I'm like actively like, no, never, does not belong there.
It does not belong. But I think that that's so interesting that kind of like Twilight Twilight Zone influences this,
which then influences, it's sort of
making a movie, you know,
it's like, almost like Uncharted and Tomb Raider.
Yeah, right.
Uncharted influenced by Tomb Raider to the point where people used to make fun of it and call it Dude Raider, and then the style of Uncharted was then incorporated and inspired the Tomb Raider reboot. So it's all like full circle.
And they've gone on to make just as much money again, you know, with Tomb Raider attached to it. You know, like those games constantly are on the top buying charts, even though they're years and years old at this point. It's kind of wild.
They're fun.
And I think anybody can pick them up.
But as far as like Creepshow is concerned, like comparing it to Twilight Zone the movie is good because that's a movie I have like mixed feelings about.
Yeah.
Only because I feel like too much time is spent. I think it should have all been just original stories. Like I get that you wanted remaking some of like the more popular like episodes
to make it be like, wow, it's really Twilight Zone, you know. But also at the same time, you're kind of like, but give me new stuff, you know. Like don't give.
And the new stuff that's there is usually pretty good. Like I like the John Landis segment, despite the very obvious behind the scenes controversy behind that and the tragedy surrounding that whole thing. But I also really like the Joe Dante segment, which gets to flex that like Gremlins energy. Joe Dante was just put on this earth to make fucked up cartoons. It just happened to be horror movies instead. But that's one of those things where, again, not every short is like consistently there.
Yes. So I think, you know, if we're going to like get into Creepshow and Trick or Treat, I think the thing that also links this movie is not only a star cast, but also a pretty star-studded, you know, creative team behind these. You know, like I feel like with Creepshow, it's so apparent. You have Stephen King on writing duty. You know, like so you have the king of fucking horror writing a movie. And then you have which shows so hard. I feel like Stephen King shows that him writing a movie is hard for him here, but like at the same time, it's so interesting to see. But then you have George A. Romero on directing duties, and you're just like, and the man is at his absolute peak. Like not like this isn't George A. Romero like older and not being able to like be at the top of his game. He's just top of his fucking game.
Yes.
And he's doing it. Like, and I feel like that's what Creepshow kind of like shows a lot, is that he's able to like be a genre master at the same time as making like really interesting, striking visuals.
And then if that wasn't enough, he also brought over Tom Savini to do the fucking creature effects. So I'm like, what a trifecta. And Savini's worked with Romero before. He did the effects for both Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead.
Yes. I think that
and then Savini would end up directing the remake of Night of the Living Dead.
I think that it's a pretty fantastic movie. Like, it's one of those things that like feels so ingrained in horror, like the whole movie, that it's just I love that, like it feels so Stephen King, like there's so many little Stephen King bits that feel like I'm reading a Stephen King book instead of just seeing an adaptation of his.
Yes.
Like that.
But also a Stephen
apparent.
King comic that shows a clear love for old horror comics in a way that we probably wouldn't see again probably until the first like volume of American Vampire. Really?
Yeah.
That like kind of energy.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that there's a lot to be said about that George and Steven were good friends and that they wanted to work together for a long time, and then chose this opportunity, which was such an open landscape, to work together. And I feel like that's what's cool about this, is it's just like it's Stephen King and George A. Romero working in like a sandbox and really bringing like really cool visions to the screen, which is really cool.
Yeah. And each segment is distinct. It feels like its own flavor, even though it's linked by like the narrative. Like these are different stories in the comic. So it has that like framing device with like little young Joe Hill playing the little boy, which is hilarious in retrospect.
I do love that like it is like little Joe Hill, and they use a little, so at the beginning he gets slapped by his dad, like the dad character, and I guess Stephen King was worried about him being traumatized or something, so there's a little jump cut and you can kind of see that he's slapping himself in the close jump cut, like you see Joe Hill's like slapping himself, and I think that's so funny.
Tom Atkins has talked about that. Like I was just watching In Search of Darkness again, which is like a big fucking 4-hour long 80s horror documentary. I was just like, let me just put that on in the background, I'll watch that shit again. And Tom Atkins had talked about like when he did Creepshow, like Stephen King was like very concerned about it. It's like, oh, come on, you're not gonna hurt him, are you? You're not gonna really hurt him, are you? That's my little boy. And Tom's like, it's like, Stephen, I'm a professional actor. It's fine. We're gonna be fine. It's gonna be okay. Of course, I'm not gonna hurt him.
It's so funny. I love that. Yeah, like that's like you got to be worried, I guess, but like also like come on. Like,
but I also love the like, I'm gonna cast my son as the kid who like kills his dad with a voodoo doll.
Yeah, it's just like okay. I think these stories all kind of work well together as these kind of generally creepy, generally sometimes a little wacky, a little like cartoonish, as
it's a straight up comic.
Straight up comic, like it's such a fun.
Even
fun way.
The slogan for the movie is the most fun you'll have being scared.
Yes, and I think they do a great job of keeping it creepy. I think that is. Even though there's a little bit of fun going on, like there's a little bit, wackiness, I think they do a good job of keeping it creepy throughout, which can be lost when you're trying to be like wacky, like it can get kind of, the creepiness can just leave the room, like, and they somehow are able to keep that here. And I think it a really good balance.
And there's some pretty dark humor in this sometimes too. Like the thing I always think about the most is the husband from like the Fluffy segment imagining shooting his wife in the head, and then everyone else at the party just applauds him for it. You're like, holy shit,
good form. Yeah. You're just like, oh my god. That was there's some really like dark moments in this, and you're just like, oh shit, like okay. And I think that that's what makes it so fun, is that like it captures those like bleak comic book feels of like, I'm never going to see these characters again. They're leaving them to this dark fate, you know, like this like, and you know, like, or this like story that just ends in horror. Like I would say the Stephen King short, which I like, the transformation of starts with a V, but there's a part of the film where Stephen King is the main character of the short. And I think that is such a funny bit, because first off, Stephen King is never a good actor. He's been in several movies and he's never very good. And in this he's chewing, you know.
Oh yeah,
he's absolutely chewing everything. He does some commendable stuff here, but like it really goes.
It works. Like, it works with the tone, though.
Yes, it works with the tone where you're
both
just
of like the project as a whole, but also this specific segment.
Yeah, where it's like goofy hillbilly, you know, like.
Do you want to just tackle? Yeah. Do you want to just tackle each one?
Let's each one. Why am I jumping ahead? Yeah, let's tackle.
So we have like the framing device of the prologue, where we have like this little boy named Billy who's being disciplined by his dad, played by Tom Atkins, because he's reading Creepshow, a horror comic. And this is like peak, like, what are you reading that garbage for? That's no good for you. If you find your kid reading that trash, you just slap him. That'll teach him.
Teach him. That's what. Yeah. What's he say? That's what fathers are for. And
you're like, Jesus, that's why God made fathers, babe. That's why God made fathers. Like, what the fuck? Made fathers.
It's a dark beginning of the fucking movie. You're just like, oh, okay, you know. Like,
and then like the son, like, I hope you rot in hell. And then you see like the eponymous like creep peeking out the window, like, sup. And then we cut to like.
I love that, because the kid just is like, my buddy, and just like runs up to Creepshow, like,
like, and then we cut to like, and we cut to the actual comic book that was discarded blowing off of the trash can, and it opening up to the first segment, which is a really well done effect that was much harder to do back then. That transition from like actual footage of the physical book to an animated version of it to frame the segment, and then switching back to live action, like. This is all shit you can do in just editing software now, but you had to like hand animate this shit back then.
It's insane. It's insane, and it does look beautiful the whole time, and you're just like, that's incredible.
So the first segment is Father's Day.
Father's Day. Now I especially love this one, because it does feel like Stephen King, but it also kind of feels Ronald Dahl-ish in a way, you know what I mean?
Roald, you mean?
Roald Dahl. Yeah, Roald Dahl. Because like the characters are so hateable and so cartoonishly bad, and like characters of like creepy old people, you know, like it's just like, and it's just like but I just love this short so much. I thought this was such a great introduction to this movie, because I was like, okay, this is great, because it's like, it's a very simple concept. Just literally one zombie comes back and fucks with a family, but somehow it really like has impact, and and really works really well. And is that was I right? Was that Ed Harris in there? Yeah.
Yes, that's a young Ed Harris.
Yeah, you're like, what the fuck is Ed Harris doing here? Like, it's wild. But I think that this short it's kind of got some iconic imagery, you know, like of like him coming out of the grave. Yeah, I want my cake, you know, like
For those of you who are watching the video version of the podcast,
look at that shirt.
Yep,
he's got it. But yeah, no, he's coming out with the, you know,
like it's not.
Head.
It's like it's not my favorite segment. I like all the segments. This one's not my favorite, but everyone always quotes who have seen this movie. It's Father's Day, and I got my cake.
I got my cake. I think that this is such an awesome little short, and I immediately was
and
like,
plus, you know, if you need a zombie who else are you going to tap beyond besides like Romero and Savini, who arguably like, you know, Romero himself made arguably, no, probably inarguably, the most iconic zombie movie of all time, and then did it again with Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, right. Like, exactly. It's like he can't, he was like, oh, did I just create the genre? And then he's just like, not really create the genre, but like blow up the genre, and then like completely.
But just the 1-2 punch, just like, what's the most iconic zombie movie of all time? Night of the Living Dead. What's the second most iconic zombie movie of all time? Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah. Exactly. But I think that it just shows his mastery here, and like his style here is so just wonderful. I think it's got style. It's so classic in a lot of ways. Feels like you're watching an old movie. It's great.
It pops up more later, but there is a little bit of it here. I love the comic booky like ass backgrounds where they get like real graphic and they just frame the actors with like red and like a weird pattern, like it's an old comic. Like stuff that we
doing the flashbacks of the aunt in with the dad on Father's Day in the panels, and he's just I want my cake.
Yeah, and it's like in an iris. You're like, this is so. If you tried this today without like the knowledge of like how the format works and like how the medium works, then it would come off as so cheesy. It'd be like an Ang Lee Hulk thing where you're like, oh, come on, stop it.
Yeah, you don't have to, but at the same time, one of my like favorite video games of all time, and it's just like one of my favorite like styles was Comics Zone on Sega Genesis. That shit fucking hit. That still hits. It's an amazing style.
It's a pain in the ass game. I've actually never beaten that. I should like go back and actually beat it.
Oh God, it's hard. It's hard. Yeah. But it's an amazing game.
But games like that have like taken advantage of that medium to like really invest you, because even beyond like Comic Zone, you have the ultimate Spider-Man game, which is straight off the page of like Mark Bagley and Brian Bendis, which is why I've always argued that was the best Spider-Man game until the Insomniac game got made.
Okay. All right.
Because it's like the Spider-Man 2 movie game, but more polished and less padding, and a lot more comic booky.
Yeah, but come on.
And even beyond that, there's also
the PS1 ones.
Yeah, the Neversoft game is a lot of fun too.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun.
I played that again for the first time in years, like earlier this year. I'm like, yeah, this is still great.
It's still good.
But even beyond that, there's also 13, which was adapted from like a French espionage comic, which I also have a copy of behind me. And that also took advantage of like the cell shading style and using comic book panels as like transition and framing.
Interesting. Okay. I don't know if I've seen that one. I'll have to check it out. But I think this Father's Day one has a lot of iconic imagery in it. I think that's what makes it so strong. Like it's not, the story isn't a lot of impact. It's what's happening in it that does.
Yeah.
And like that's pretty cool. But then we were talking about 2 already.
The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill.
Is that like, Stephen King, he's writing the movie, he's got his kid in the movie. He puts himself in the second story as the main character there. And he, eats the scenery. But like at the same time, it's kind of one of the most like bleak ending of all of these, and in kind of an amazing way, like it's one of those where you're like feeling like it's all a joke until the end. And
it's pretty comedic, and then it ends just nihilistically.
Yeah, you're just like, Jesus Christ, which feels so King, like it's just like you're like, oh, it's so bad, and then like, oh,
if there's like
the bleakest ending.
If there's like one quote I probably hear the most from this movie, it's meteor shit.
Meteor shit. Yeah, right. Meteor shit. I fucking love it.
I'm pretty sure that's actually because when I do the 30 movies in October with my buddy Alex, I always give him like fake names for each movie so he doesn't know what we're watching. I'm pretty sure when we did Creepshow years ago, I called it meteor shit.
That's so good. The thing the only thing I didn't like about this, but also kind of made it funny, was all the weird like daydreaming that the Stephen King character was doing,
going cross-eyed and like a nice like wavy fade to like him imagining like him getting rich off this meteorite.
Right. But then I really liked at the end when he's having like the kind of like horrific flashbacks. I mean, daydreams about the doctor whipping out the cleaver to cut off his arm, it's kind of like it goes all horror, goes all like classic horror doctor film, like horror movie, and you're just like, all right, okay, like okay, I'm seeing, what's happening, and then it ends super dark and you're just like, Jesus Christ, like but it also might be what saves that short is you're kind of like, okay, Stephen King's hamming it up. It's kind of those
you can see
flashbacks.
You can see you can see the scenery between his teeth. He's eating it up so much.
But the effects are good, and you're kind of like, okay, and then like it ends with him blowing his brains out, and you're just like,
Not only like blowing his brains out, but like the vegetation like spreading elsewhere to like affect other people. Just like, well, there goes the world.
There goes the world. There it goes. I thought that was pretty great. All right, so what's number 3? That's
Something to tide you over. That's the one with Leslie Nielsen and Ted Danson.
This is the second movie I've watched in 24 hours where Leslie Nielsen is playing a very straight character, and it's thrown me the fuck off, man.
Well, that's the
Prom
thing.
Night.
That's
he's so serious in Prom Night, and
that's the ironic thing. Like people associate him with like the Airplane movies and The Naked Gun, etc.
Yeah.
He was like a straight man actor before those movies. That's what he was casted as. Like doing those movies was actually against type for him, but he became so popular off of that him playing straight again became against type for him again in the opposite way.
Well, he's such like a funny guy, that's the wild part is like, because even the behind the scenes, they said he had a fart machine with him, and he would like right before they would say action, he would always set off the fart machine just to like get everybody to laugh right before they
but also if you notice, at least if we're talking the original Airplane, part of the humor with him is that he is playing it completely straight, at least in Airplane. You get to stuff like Naked Gun, he's like leaning into the joke, but with Airplane it's funny because he's taking all this ridiculous stuff so seriously, and that's the joke.
I agree. But it is wild. I feel like to I watch Prom Night,
and he's fucking scary in this.
Yeah, he is scary in this. This is a wild short. Like, of course, it ends as comic booky as possible, but it is a wild short because you don't know why he's really doing this to these two, right? Like, you don't really.
Well, the idea is that like. Ted Danson's character had an affair with his wife. Ted Danson's character like works under him, had an affair with his wife, and seems like ended up like leaving it for him, and this is just him exacting vengeance for it.
Yeah. Okay, because I was just like, this is so straight, because I didn't catch that when I was watching, and I was just like, so he was like, he's threatening Rebecca right from the get-go, and I didn't get that Rebecca was his wife before, I don't know why I didn't pick up on that, but like, I was just like, the whole time I was just like, Jesus Christ, he barely has any motivation for this crazy shit, but
there's a motivation there.
I guess,
but I like as an immediate contrast to like the segment preceding this, that this is so grounded. Because you're like, okay, we went from like man slowly turning into a plant to just like straight up infidelity and like specific vengeance. It's one of those things where like you almost fools you into thinking it's like, okay, maybe there just won't be a supernatural element to this one. Maybe this will just be straight up like some serial killer shit.
Right. And that's why it feels like, because at first it's just, I feel like a very Stephen King horror short, like I've read a lot of short stories by Stephen King. I've read most of his short story collections. I mean, there's a couple I'm missing. But like,
well, he never stops writing.
Yeah,
so
he never stops writing.
You'll never finish reading Stephen King. You'll never be caught up.
Yeah, he writes fast as I can read him. But it's like I there is this kind of like genre he does where it's just like a sadistic kill, you know, like, and you're just like, but he kind of turns it around to make it comic booky here by being like sadistic kill.
But it's also like
water zombie, you know,
yeah, but it's also
like,
so simple at the start, which is nice and kind of just makes it scarier. It reminds me in the sense that like Cujo has the element of just like, oh, the dog got infected by a bat, but even if it didn't have that, you could still have a movie about just a mother and her child stuck in a car dealing with like a rabid dog,
right?
And that's so simple, but you can carry an entire story with that.
Exactly. And I feel like that's, you know, what makes Stephen King kind of a genius, you know, like, as he does that. Like, yes, I feel like you can nitpick a lot of Stephen King stuff, and like, you might not just buy into what he's doing, but like, if you do, you know, like, I feel like that you
sometimes it is just vibes. Don't try to think about the actual logic of it too hard. He certainly wasn't in the early days. He was too coked up to.
Too coked up. Says he doesn't remember writing Carrie, and I think that's the wildest shit. Like, the
I mean, that was
literally got famous for.
That was like super early in his like career, though. That's the thing, and that was like all coke. So he's like snorted a lot of those early memories away.
Fucking insane. But then they. I feel like there's basically just Leslie Nielsen like fucking being methodical, and I love the little camera setups and like how slow this short is a little bit, you know, like, it's just like him taking his time, and he's at home, and you're kind of waiting for the other beat for a bit, you know, like, is he gonna go back to get him, or is he just gonna watch them drown?
But like the inevitability of it too is like so scary, how it's just like you have no control over this. This is such a simple thing that if anyone else is here, I could easily get out of. It's just like, I'm just going to bury you up to your head and watch the tide come in to watch you drown. Like, that is so specific and slow and something to savor. You're like, geez.
Yeah, I agree.
And man loves you see the quality of that picture? He loves the quality of his picture, which is so funny to think about, like, that day and age.
Thinking about the quality of picture, you're like,
this baby can reach a whole 360p, my friend.
Yeah, right. Not even, dude.
Then
it was like 240, 140 something stupid. It's ridiculous. You know, like, you're like, what the fuck are we talking about here? But I do think that this is kind of just like a simple, effectively chilling short, and then it like kind of goes comic booky at the end, you know, like, but overall it's very chilling, you know?
It's sort of like it's kind of in that way I had already mentioned this as a good contrast, but it's kind of the perfect like antithesis to the previous short, because it has the opposite tone. That one started comedic and ends very bleak, and this one starts very bleak and ends super comedic. I can hold my breath for a long time with like the freeze frame and everything. Just the shot, even before we get to Leslie Nielsen doing it, the shot of Ted Danson's head under the water is so silly, but it works.
Right? It's wild. You're like, what the and with the red light behind it, you're like, what?
And that was also
Ted Danson and Leslie Nielsen.
And that was also just like Ed Harris. That was also pretty early in Ted Danson's career too.
Right? You can kind of tell. I feel like, you know, he's not totally comfortable, you know, like, but he is still great, you know, like, I feel like, and I do like this short. So after that,
this one is The Crate.
The Crate. So I feel like this is a really interesting one. This is wild, like, because it's not super well designed monster, but it still somehow works really well. Like,
and the thing I liked about this one was that you kind of could never really guess where it was going to go based on how it started.
Yeah,
because it starts like with, and it's not even the case of like, oh, it started kind of lighthearted and then gets dark. Just given the way the premise starts, you have no idea. It's like, what is this even going to end up being? Is it going to be about this husband just getting fed up with his wife and just murdering her for real instead of just imagining it? And then we just bring in this crate with a monster. You're like, okay, shit, all right,
sure.
I'm going for it.
To bring it all together, you're just like, all right, I guess this does kind of all fit together. You're like, this is so very strange. But
I think as far as like the design of Fluffy, which is his name,
Fluffy,
according to Tom Savini.
Yes.
I think it's the body that's the problem, because it just looks like it just looks like a white ape suit. But I think the actual like face is cool, and like the animatronic and puppetry there is cool. And it was also something different for Tom Savini, because he wasn't really known for designing creatures. He was more on just like the human body stuff. He was a Vietnam like vet. He was a war photographer, so like he's seen gore up close. That's why he was so good at it during his career. Just like, oh, you gotta take inspiration somewhere. Write and create what you know. You know what I mean?
Oh, Jesus, fuck. But yes, I know what you're saying. Jesus.
With Fluffy, that was something different he hadn't really tackled before. And I can't remember who he had contacted. This was also brought up in Search of Darkness, because I'm watching the second one right now in the background. He had talked about how I think he had either called Stan Winston or Rick Baker. I think it was Stan Winston. And he's just like, oh, I just talked to him over the phone, and he taught me how to like do a creature like this. And I just kind of figured it out.
That's cool. Yeah, he says for like an hour and a half or something like that, which is kind of fun. You know, like it's kind of cool little like masters lining up to create something. And I think that it's kind of, right. You don't know where this short is going, and it is all over the place, because it's just like this man fantasizing about killing his obnoxious wife.
Very obnoxious wife, very well played and hammed up by Adrienne Barbeau, who you've seen in like a bunch of movies. Escape from New York, the original Wes Craven Swan Thing. She's Catwoman in Batman the Animated Series.
Really? That's so funny. That's so funny. I thought I kind of like recognized her voice. I was just like, what is happening?
Yeah.
But she I felt
she's also in The Fog.
Yeah, she's
I think she was married to John Carpenter at one point, like for a bit.
Okay. That makes sense. But you know, like they do such a good job of being like, Jesus Christ, you know, and like every time she's like yelling at him and like demeaning him, you're just like, oh my God, you know, like, so when he's like fantasizing about killing her, you're like, eh, then like you're kind of like, man. You're like,
every man has his breaking point.
Yeah, you're like, he's gonna be pushed too far. But then like it's kind of like an unpredictable thing, because then you have the whole thing with the crate, which you're just like, what the fuck is going to be inside this crate? And for it to be like a giant thing instead of just like, I thought it was going to be like a crate monster, and it's like somehow was this
some like basket case shit.
Yeah, like that's what I thought it was going to be, like coming out of the basket the whole time, but no, it was not.
But it's just like this full-sized creature. Like, huh? Okay.
All right. You're like, oh, okay. And then it's just like, no, I like the stairs. I like the stairs. I like being underneath the stairs. You can bring things to me and I'll eat them, but I'm going to be behind the stairs. But like,
yeah, you know, I'm an introvert. I understand.
And but like for it to just go on its rampage a little bit, you know, right at the beginning is pretty crazy. And then for the guy to change clean up the rampage so that his wife doesn't freak out just to kill her with the crate monster is wild every time. I'm just like, what? Like, I was just like, this is, I was like, at the same time, I was just like, this is where this was leading. You know, but it's like wild that it all kind of came together. You're just like, this is crazy. And then he hides it and he's like, but friend, we are, you know, like he kind of like keeps his eye on his friend forever after that, you know, like, which is wild too. Like
it is definitely like the hardest to guess. Although for this segment, I do also think it's the one that maybe goes on a little long.
Yes, I do think that there's some.
I think that middle bit where like we're building up to like bringing his wife over and stuff like kind of goes on forever.
Yes, I feel
like the bit with like the letter and the gossip and her like trying to like lead her in, and even the bit where he's like trying to get her close to the crate goes on for like a minute. You're like, just push her into get it over with. We know where this is going.
It's kind of like the wasting time of Leslie Nelson in the last one was creepy, but them wasting time here, you're kind of like, get the fuck to it, you know? Like you're like, please just do it, you know? Like I want to see more of this creature, you know? Like you're like, which they just refer to it as a Tasmanian devil at some point, and I'm like, I guess that's what it's supposed to be. Like, I'm not exactly sure what it's supposed to be.
Definitely not. I've seen what Tasmanian devils look like, not up
right?
close.
Exactly.
But
you're like, that's not close.
there's a reason they call them devils, though. You can hear them at night. They make frightening noises. I'm like, oh, that's why they call them devils. There must have been motherfuckers who just build whole folklores about these bastards.
They're like, fuck that. Yeah, it's one of those things that, like, Fisher cats, you know, what they scream and they sound like screaming children in the woods, and you're like, no wonder people thought like the New England woods were fucking haunted. And when we were young, you know, like back when the nation was young, they're just like, Jesus Christ, like they're just like there's wailing children in the woods, and you're just like, yes, every night
there be witches, boy, stay out of the woods.
You're like, no wonder Salem was like very much feeling haunted. They were just hearing Fisher cats screaming in the woods at all time. But besides the point, I do think that that waste some time here. It could get to it faster. It could move at a quicker pace. But it is a fun creature design. It's a fun story. It's unpredictable. The effect, the like kill effects are really cool too. I feel like Charlie getting ripped apart was good. I was like, I was like, that was a good effect. I was like,
I also just love seeing old ass crates like that.
Yeah,
because it just thinks about how readily available like it is shipping.
Too, and she was like, "We used to crate things, you know?
Yeah,
we used to be a proper country. We used to crate things.
We used to crate things. We used to keep that shit secure when we sent it out.
Seriously, that shit was.
Nowadays they'd fucking put Fluffy in a giant Manila envelope.
I know, right? Like the Amazon box comes in and it's got Fluffy inside.
And it's got like no padding in it, so it's just rustling inside the whole time.
Oh, god damn it. But yeah, seriously, we don't crate things anymore. Let's crate things again. Let's bring crating things back. Let's
the crowbar's there for a reason.
Yeah, crowbar's there for a reason. Let's use it. Not just to kill robins. You know, use to open crates. Now I do think it's kind of like, thank God that's not the last short, you know. Like,
yes.
I do think that, you know, like, okay, let's end it with the bang.
Which is my favorite one. Like, the last one is my favorite.
Yes. It's pretty great. The creeping on you. What's this one called?
You got it. They're creeping on you.
They're creeping on you. now this one is... It's funny because they even say in the behind the scenes that it was written as a lush carpeted apartment, and then they changed it to, because that would be too hard to have bugs in, to this aesthetically like bland, like perfectly nothing apartment,
almost sci-fi futuristic.
Yeah, almost sci-fi futuristic. Yeah. I thought they were trying to shoot for sci-fi-ish a little bit. I was just like, this is wild. But you know, a guy who's afraid of germs getting swarmed by bugs.
A rich dickhead, really obviously the head of a big company who's afraid of germs and treats everyone around him like shit. And has just insulated himself away from the world and is dealing with a pest problem.
It's a simple concept that, you know, is just genuinely creepy, and you know, you don't like, you know, looking at all them bugs, and like I feel like it does a great job of escalating, you know,
and played by good old E.G. Marshall, who's like an industry vet at that point in time. He's like in 12 Angry Men and the like.
Exactly.
And he's so good at playing a fucking prick.
He's so good. I feel like he's fantastic in this role. He really sells it. Like, and there's a lot of real bugs there. And God, I couldn't have done that. I couldn't have shot that stuff.
So yeah, I fucking hate roaches, man. I've dealt with roaches before. You know, I've lived in many places. It sucks.
Like,
that amount of roaches is just frightening, and it's so simple. Yeah. It's just like just a bunch of bugs.
And you know what's the worst thing? One of the worst things about roaches, you know, they're terrible. But then the natural predator of cockroaches is those giant centipedes. Those like basement. Those things are horrible.
The ones that freak you out.
Yeah, with the fuck tons of legs and they're all like spiny, like straight up. The H.G. Wells fucking created those fucking bugs, but like they are Jesus Christ. You're just like, great, I got one horrifying bug, cockroaches, and then you got their
and then it attracts the other one.
And you're like, fuck that.
Yeah.
Hell nah.
But yeah, so there were so many live actual cockroaches because, you know, we didn't have CGI to just do a bunch of cockroaches back then. So we just used a bunch of real cockroaches. And of course, when you're using that much, which is a very excessive amount by the time you get to the end of the segment, it's kind of hard to wrangle all of those. So, of course, you know, not all of them got gathered up. And to this day, the warehouse in which they shot that segment in, which is a completely different building for a different purpose, now still has a roach problem because of that.
Oh, my God. Of course they do. They couldn't get rid of them all. That's fucked up. That's fucked up. That's wild though. And that's the thing is I feel it feels so authentic and like real, and like you could do that segment today a lot cheaper and it just wouldn't work as well as this does. You know,
like it being real actual roaches just like makes it all the grosser, the like it ending up in his food and then being everywhere and crawling out of his body at the end. It's just like, God.
Yeah, and I kind of love the crawling out of the body at the end. I was just like, it was one of those reactions where I just go, yep, they're doing that, you know, like,
and it's like almost a leap because it's again one of those things where it's been pretty grounded up to that point, but it's so visceral and gross and almost maybe acts as like a metaphor because this whole thing, while not
he's rotten
explicitly supernatural, sort of has that like metaphoric of just like they're creeping on you, you'll be eaten away in the same way that you've eaten people.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's what works so well about this is that it's not supernatural, but it kind of is. It's kind of like a vengeance.
Yeah, it's subtly.
You know? Yeah. And you know, there's no direct cause because there is a ton of people that do hate him, but you know, like there's nobody. They're not alluding to somebody controlling the fucking bugs. You know, like they're just like, no, these bugs have come to kill this fucking evil man. You know, like you're just like, Jesus Christ, like, but I feel like that it does it's you know, a great final short. I feel like it really works well, and you know, it shows strong acting, great practical effects, like real strong aesthetic and cinematography, and then ends with the fun. The garbage men like literally going through the comic book, seeing things.
And of course, one of them is Tom Savini.
Yeah, right. One's Tom Savini. They can't hear anybody. What'd you say? It's a comic book. I like those. I love that they say that, oh, the voodoo doll's been pulled out, and then they cut over to the son using the voodoo doll and the dad, and you're just like,
the things. One of those great, just like the crate thing, one of those things you have to explain to like children. Just like, you see, kids, there were these things in magazines where you would like pull out like a little perforated card that you would have to send for to be sent a thing.
Yeah, that's not, they're like, just,
and sometimes it would take, and sometimes things would take longer than a week to show up.
Right. Years. Sometimes like months, you know, like you'd order something in months, years later.
Could you imagine trying to fucking sell a kid on like the Kenner Star Wars thing today? Where it's just like, these aren't made yet. So here's like a voucher. You will get them some point.
To be fair, that's a fucking pre-order, and kids are doing that like left and
True.
right. It's true. It's like, so the Kenner was just the beginning, you know, being like, we haven't made it yet, but using
just the archaic form of a pre-order.
Yeah, right. Very archaic. But
he gets the voodoo doll, ends up like stabbing it to like punish his dad.
It's like, that's the thing, is like there's some dark humor, there's some fun. It's like there's really like satire. It's a B movie, but in the best way possible with Creepshow. And you can see why it did so well in theaters, you know, like the great cast and the absolutely star-studded team of King
and spawned
Romero.
2 sequels and a TV show.
2 sequels and a TV show.
Creepshow 2 is not as good.
No,
but there is
thinking of watching. I was like, oh, now
one
seen it.
it doesn't have Romero or King, so that's the first mistake. I think it still has Romero a little bit. Definitely doesn't have King. It still has Tom Savini. There's not as many shorts. It's like shortened. I think there's only it's only like 3 or 4 this time.
Yeah, it's an hour 32 minutes.
Yeah. It's not
hours.
as strong. The in-between segments are way worse because they go for like more of an...
There's a Creepshow 3, but it's rated so fucking low.
Yes. Creepshow 3 was a case for like, it has nothing to do with the first two. It was a case of, it seemed like they just wanted to make something else and they just called it Creepshow 3. Yeah. They're just like, what IP do we have that we can use? And we'll just fast track a Creepshow 3. Why not?
You could just
forget it exists.
Like there's any producer on here that actually owns Creepshow.
It was one of those things where they were just trying to cash in on the name really fast.
Unless it was, I mean, there's this Robert Franklin Dodson. He's the producer also on Creepshow, the TV show now. But like
the show, I've only seen like
the same.
I've only seen most of the first season. I like watch it here and there. It's pretty good. It works. Episodes can be hit or miss sometimes, but it works for the format. And sometimes they'll bring on people who were like in the like original movie on for stuff. Like Adrian Barbeau was like in one of the episodes in the first season.
Oh, but this guy's a weird producer though, because he did Creep. So he's doing things that George A. Romero, probably wouldn't have done. He did a movie called Museum of the Dead, one called Day of the Dead 2 Contagium, Creepshow 3, and then 2008's Day of the Dead, which is, I know, very bad.
So he's just the like riding the Romero's coattails guy?
Yeah. There's another one called Day of the Dead Bloodline. And then he did the TV show Day of the Dead in 2021, and he's the executive producer of the Creepshow television show.
That's so
he's
weird.
kind of just like weirdly riding his coattails. I need to know more about this guy.
You don't, not right now.
You're just like, yeah, I know, but you're like, how did this guy do this?
But the point is, Creepshow 2, 3, don't worry about. 2, not as good. Almost worth the price of admission just for one of the segments on there. There's one segment on Creepshow 2 that's really fucking good. The other two, they're not bad, but it's just not as strong overall. The in-betweens are pretty rough because they go for like more of an animated film thing, and it looks really bad.
Oh, okay. Because like the animated titles worked fine here. And it's just like that's cool. That's fun. But yeah, I know what you mean. Now let's move on to our second half of this show. We have Trick or Treat, which I feel like is another kind of star-studded cast.
Yes, the Michael Dougherty one, not to be confused with Trick or Treat, the like rock star one. The like metal band fucking horror one from the 80s.
Yes, that can be confusing, but this is Trick or
I'm sure there are a million horror movies called Trick or Treat, so you got to be specific.
This is written and directed by Michael Dougherty, so that's pretty fucking cool. And he is the writer director of Krampus and Godzilla versus Kong. I mean, no, Godzilla King of the Monsters.
Yes.
Also produced.
He was also like he also worked on stuff beforehand, like the early Fox X-Men movies.
Yeah, early writer for Superman Returns and X-Men 2. That's pretty crazy.
which is definitely why you have Anna Paquin and Brian Cox on this.
Yeah, right. You're just like that makes a little bit more sense. And Dylan Baker, who's fantastic and everything. You're just like it's a pretty star-studded cast. You'll definitely recognize people when you're watching it. You're just like, oh, okay. Now this one is one of those ones that I feel like a weird amount of people clung on to it, like when it came out, and we're just like, this is the one of the best horror movies ever made. Definitely people culted to this fast.
Yeah, but I feel like I didn't feel like the reverberations of that until like years after it was already a thing. Because I had never watched it until like, I want to say like half a decade ago. It was like around the time I had moved back to Western Mass.
Yeah.
And I like heard the hype around it. I knew people liked it. I was just starting to collect pops at that point. So I would see like the Sam pop everywhere and people just having like Sam merchandise. So I'm like, what is the hype with this movie.
Yeah,
and then I finally watched it and liked it. But it is interesting just how hard the cult following is. But I do sort of get it in terms of vibes because, one, as we've discussed, horror anthologies are super inconsistent, and it's tough to have one where it's consistently good throughout, and this is one of those. But also, this is the most Halloween film to like ever Halloween.
Yes, I feel like that is the best description of this. This is the most Halloween-y film to ever Halloween. It's like, yes, there's a movie called Halloween, but like this is Halloween themed. Halloween takes place on Halloween. Like it is all about Halloween stories. It is the like the Halloween movie. You know, like it really is. You know, and the thing is, it is able to succeed in being that instead of just being like, oh yeah, this is the one we got. You know, like you're like, no, this is good shit. You know, like this is some damn good shit. So let's go through the shorts again on this.
You have the opening scene with like the wife and the husband who like blows out the jack-o'-lanterns, etc. And it's like, don't blow it up. So it's like, don't blow it out before midnight. There are rules to like All Hallows Eve.
Rules, which I like the kind of like setting the tone right away of like telling stories, and that's what Halloween really is about. Sharing stories, you know, like, you know, yes, it's about candy, you know, like trick or treat, but like, yes, it's about sharing stories and creepy stories, you know, like, and I think they kind of established that right from the beginning, and I think that's kind of fun and really rooted to what this movie is truly about.
So wife is then murdered because don't blow out the jack-o'-lanterns.
Don't do it.
Then we get a very also kind of a comic booky like opening credits sequence.
Yeah, definitely.
Like in its own respect.
I think it's paying its respects to Creepshow a little bit there, where it's being like, yes, this is another comic book in a way, you know, like we're short stories, you know, and you're like, okay.
And then the first segment is the Dylan Baker one with the principal.
Yes, which is pretty fucking creepy, you know, like pretty fucking creepy story. First off, Dylan Baker's great. I feel like he sells this like he just sells this. There's no other way to say it, because I don't think this short would have worked without how like wholesome he looks and can sound so creepy at the same time. You know, you're just like, Jesus fuck.
And it's also like constantly turning on itself, where it's just like, this guy just kind of a creepy asshole, and then he's just like, okay, he's actually a murderer. He fed a kid candy with razor blades. The classic like urban legend, check your candy, there will be razor blades in it.
You're like, who would do that? And you're like, he did it. He done did it. You know, like, and you're just
I knew a guy's cousin's sister mailman who did it.
You're just like,
it was totally a thing.
Which is true. Like statistically, it's literally like never happened. You know, it's just literal like witch hunt bullshit to like razor blades, and you know, but like
because it is one of those things where like it's a fucking razor blade. It'd be pretty fucking conspicuous, especially these days where like everything's bite sized, so you can't get that shit in there and hide it well.
They try to act like you could just be like, oh yeah, they would just push through the blade right into the wrapper and you wouldn't see it. You're like, I would notice a wrapper being open from a blade being pushed through it. Like, you know, like it would definitely be like, that candy's open, you know, like, you know, but I guess that's the point, you know, of being like, oh, it's open. I should not eat it. But, you know, like that's kind of the fun of the actual.
But I don't actually think it's the razor blade in the can. I think didn't he lace the candy with cyanide?
Something like that.
I think it was that. I think it was that instead of the razor blades. It's been a bit. But the point is, like, it's like, okay, he just killed a kid. Now it's like this sort of comedy of errors for him to like bury it and not be caught by his weird, nosy neighbor played by Brian Cox. He's just like, fuck you. Just isolated old man who hates everything and everyone. And then we start to, and then we realize he has a son, and you're like, oh man, is he going to kill his kid too?
Yeah, right. You're just like, Jesus Christ.
And then it's like, I want to carve the jack-o'-lantern, Dad. I want to carve the jack-o'-lantern. And then they end up carving the kid.
Yep.
That he had just killed. It's just like, oh, all right. I see someone's grooming his successor.
Just like,
but I
Christ.
love that turn.
Yes, I do
And
love
plus,
that turn.
I love a horror movie that'll just have the balls to kill a kid.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, I feel like it's one of those things that I watch Papa Meat on YouTube. I don't know if you've ever watched him. He does like Meat Canyon as his animations, but he's got a channel called Papa Meat. But he has this whole thing where he talks about like not enough movies have the balls to do child murder, and you know what? Child murder is when you do it, you're like, you got balls. So
Yeah,
like whenever it happens, you're like, okay, there you go.
Because it's such easy stakes to just put a kid in there for like fake stakes. You're like, I know the kid's going to be fine. You're just using it to like drum up the suspense, but I know you won't actually have the balls. And then when they do have the balls, you're like, okay, good. It actually makes things feel dangerous now because anything can happen.
Yes, exactly. It doesn't feel like all of a sudden plot armor has entered the room,
and
you know, like, and you're just
and
like,
plus,
wait.
And plus, let's be honest, people are weird. So
yes,
people would treat the dog dying as worse than a kid dying anyway. So
it's true. It's so true. And that's a very sad but true thing.
Meanwhile, we're very flippant about killing cats in horror movies. So many dead cats in horror movies. We don't care.
It's like one of those things that a lot of people don't like Hocus Pocus just because of when he gets run over by the car and then he like gets back up afterward because they didn't like the way he inflates. I've heard people be like, I do not like that. And I'm like, that is very fair. Like that is very
Gotta
weird.
toughen you up somehow.
But yeah.
That's the first segment. The second one is the Halloween school bus massacre.
Yes,
with the kids like actually going around like trick-or-treating.
I love this one because it is so like a story you hear kids passing down to each other sort of thing, and it like comes across as a great set that they're using for this too. I feel like the set they use for this short is extremely well made, and just like the elevator that they go down to like check it out, you know.
I love an old creepy elevator.
Yeah,
old school elevator. Old school elevators are like so cool. It's just like a technical marvel, but also frightening.
You're just like, oh Jesus Christ. But yeah, I feel like that it's one of those like shorts that like feels real because it feels like something that would be passed from kid to kid, you know.
And it also feels like the dark version of a story you would see like on TV. Like the vibe of it is like a Halloween TV special that you would see.
Yes.
But it's like the actual like dark rated R version of that. Like you've had a million specials like that where it's about a bunch of kids actually trick-or-treating, talking about spooky stories, except this is actually fucked up.
I always felt like it was the better use of it was like, you know, not A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 tries to use a bus several times to be scary, and I feel like they finally are able to accomplish that in this movie instead of that movie just it makes me laugh when they do it, you know, like, and it just
there's a lot of things in Elm Street 2 that make me laugh.
But it was fun to watch. Which, by the way, when I meant to talk to you about it, it was so funny. We went and saw Nightmare on Elm Street. We saw Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street at Chunky's in Manchester, and which is like you know, you can eat and you sit in nice chairs while you watch movies. And so it kind of has like this party atmosphere, so people are like fun and they react to the movies more, and especially for Nightmare on Elm Street, which I never thought the mom was so funny. You know, like I never like really thought about how ridiculous the mom was in the original Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, she is kind of dryly funny,
and
just as like weathered and over it.
Was roaring with every line of hers at the end of the second half of the movie when she's like revealing that she killed Freddy, you know, like you're just like, holy fuck, you know, like it's just like it was one of those things that like I've just always thought like, yeah, you know, whatever, like horror movie when watching it by myself, but then like to watch it with an audience, everyone's just dying laughing because mom's drunk and being like, yeah, I killed him, you know, like, you know, like I did it and I'll do it again. I'm mommy protected, you know, like, and you're just like, what the fuck is happening? You know, like, it's just like,
we didn't want to tell you, but there was a child murderer in our neighborhood, killed a bunch of our kids. So it's implied that we might have had kids before you. You might have actually had siblings that you don't know about anymore. Yeah. It's like, but, Jesus. And so we did a mob justice.
So we did a mob justice. And like, And it was so funny to see people like cracking up at her like the second half of the movie, and you're just like, okay,
I sort of had that watching.
Really
I've just seen Nosferatu recently. I got to see it at Somerville Theater, presented by the New England Film Orchestra, doing a live score for it.
So cool,
super good. Love that shit. The only other time I've done that is with Suspiria, where like the actual band Goblin who did the music for it fucking performed the score live. Like
that's wild.
It's the dopest shit. It's way cooler than like 3D or like some 4DX shaky chair shit. Like a live orchestra is dope. And just watching that movie again and just having people crack up because, you know, it's an old silent movie. So by today's standards, it's pretty silly, but just like cracking up at like just the
slow moving forward, like
the slow moving forward, or just how not Jonathan Harker is just so oblivious to everything going around. Just like, vampires, huh? How silly. Tosses the book away.
It is pretty funny when you think about it. You're just like, what the fuck?
Or just like Count Orlok having the picture of his wife and just being like, and then cut to dialogue box. Your wife has a lovely neck. And Hutter just being like, what an odd thing to say. Anyway.
Oh, well, it's an odd thing to say. All right, moving on.
But, you know, an audience experience really is unmatched.
It really is. And that's why I was so happy that they were doing these, is I was just like, it is unmatched to see it with a group of like fans too, you know, like that really like drives it.
Even if you've seen the movie before.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, how many times have I seen the original Friday the 13th? And it's like, but like, it was great to see it with an audience too.
Yeah.
You know, like it was really great.
You can feel the vibes, even if you don't hear like audible, like, you know, I clapped, I laughed. You can still feel like the mood of everyone, even if it's quiet. Like I felt that when I saw the Before trilogy at the Coolidge Corner. I'm like, okay, I can just feel that there's a lot of people around me who haven't seen these before.
And I feel like that's the appeal of Marvel movies, and reason why people like to go on the opening weekend, you know, is all the fans are there together and they're all reacting together to the film as it's happening.
And that's one of the things, like, you can
vibe change, you know, like it's
just like you can criticize, say, something like Endgame until you're blue in the face, but look, man, we were all there losing our fucking goddamn minds when Cap got Mjolnir finally. So you're like, well. Don't act like you weren't. Don't act like you weren't sobbing and like punching your partner's arm, like ah. But back to the point. For Trick or Treat, the next one after that is well, we didn't really get into like more of the plot for the second one yet, actually. Because we talked about like the basic gist of it, kids going trick-or-treating. They talk about the urban legend of a Halloween school bus massacre where like mentally disabled children, the parents of mentally disabled children bribe the bus driver to get rid of them. You're like, just like, fuck. What like, the hell?
Jesus. Fucking insane.
And then like and then the bus is accidentally driven off-road and into a quarry because, of course. You know, I've never actually seen, like, a quarry.
I was saying that like, that is such a New England thing, and it's how you know, like, you know, like, some things are written by, like, Stephen King or guys from Massachusetts, like I think Michael Dougherty's a Massachusetts guy.
Well, not even that. It's also like just an easy TV thing. You know how many like Doctor Who episodes or like tokusatsu shows like Super Sentai and Power Rangers just like, well, we got to find a quarry to fight in.
It's, you know, like it is. It's one of those things that they're around. But they're not so, that commonplace that, like, you know, every fucking X-Files episode that ends with them in a quarry, you're like, how do they keep finding these bitches? You know, like, how do they keep finding these quarries?
Is this the same one, or are you just cleverly shooting around it? You found the 100th angle for this quarry, or are you just shooting in every quarry in the country?
Oh, the quarries in the country. Every quarry is ours.
But kids, they drive off the cliff and kids end up drowning, and no one ever found their survivors.
But then the kids go down to the quarry, taking a creepy elevator, being like, this story isn't real. We'll go down and we'll see. There's no bus down there, and that's they get down there, and what the I'm trying to what like they start coming out of the bus. I can't remember what.
Yeah, they're like
exactly.
it's like the Creepshow thing. It's like, oh boy, drowned zombies. They're water zombies. They start surfacing, and the girl in the group abandons the others to their deaths because they played a prank on her.
Right, that was kind of epic. That was pretty fun.
Yeah, and she takes the jack-o'-lanterns with her because they had like originally came to leave those as like a tribute to the deceased, which gets the approval of Sam at the end because he confronts her after she leaves them for dead, and it's just like, good job.
Yeah, we haven't even brought up Sam yet. So like the reason why Sam is so iconic is that he's so simple. I feel like they did such a great job of character design there, where they took like this kind of cutesy like horror design, like this cutesy, like, oh look, yeah, he's kind of like spooky and cute, and like, and they're just like, but so realized in such a horrifying way when you see him. You're just like,
which is tough to actualize.
It's really
but
tough.
there is often like a very thin, like imperceptible line between cute and creepy. And it's sometimes tough to like get there, because oftentimes people try to make cute things and it ends up being terrifying looking. Like it's such a thin line. It's
so small. It's why I feel like those fuglies are getting popular again, and they're all over Walmart and shit, is those like dolls that are ugly too, like, and you're just like, yeah, because it's easier to make the things ugly than it is to make them cute, like it's not,
like cute is tough. Cute can very easily step into creepy. I mean, look at all the things that like were supposed to be cute for their day that we find terrifying now. Like every time you look at like old dolls, you're like, oh god, how did you even have that in your house?
Exactly. You're like, Jesus fuck. Like they, your grandma used to have tons of them, and you're just like, Jesus,
get this out of here.
Get this the fuck out of here.
But the next segment after that is Surprise Party. This is the one with the girls.
Yes, this is one of the most, like, in the commercial. I feel like this is the trailer. This is the most used bit for the trailer, because it's so just like, oh yeah, teens having a sexy time, like, and like classic, like getting brought out to the woods, on Halloween night to do spooky things, and then nope. It's they've been bamboozled to being eaten by the girls. You're like,
they're trying to. The audience is baited just as much as the actual characters are.
You're just like,
it's just like, look, it's the hot girls out for a night on the town. Anna Paquin's pretty cute, right? You're like, yeah. Just like, aha, we got you.
We got you. She was a monster. You fell for it, dumbass. You'd be eaten too. You're just like, fuck. Wait, what were we watching? Where Mary was. What were we watching? We were watching something where the monster just comes to the window and it's some vampire, and the guy just like opens it up like, all right, like, and you're just like, this is why men live so much shorter lives. They don't see a floating woman in the window and be like, no, that's
yeah. I mean, that's why the like wood joke is so apparent.
yeah, right. You're just wood. You're like,
just like wood. It's worth the risk. We all got to go sometimes. I'm going through that right now, watching The Penguin.
Yeah, you're
with
just
fucking
like...
with Kristen Milioti as Sophia Falcone. Just like, this woman is terrifying and will kill me, but we all got to go sometime, and I'm gonna risk it all.
That's so funny. That's wild. But I do think that this is the most marketed part of the film, other than Sam, like, and I because she's wearing the Red Riding Hood outfit the whole time, so it is like a big like metaphor, and I thought that was fun, like, and it's just like so like it's simple, and I think it works really well. Like, you're just like, all right,
it's good to like just bait the audience and then turn it on its head. And I also like this segment specifically because it does capture that like a big Halloween party / parade / huge get together. Like, I've been to Salem around Halloween. It's a fucking blast. It's wild. It is a lot like that segment, and it reminds me of that.
Yeah, it's insane. It's a crazy time. I would not recommend it to anybody, but it is a crazy time.
Good to do when you're young. You and I are both in our 30s, so like, we ain't got time for that sort of tomfoolery no more.
Too much. Moving around too much. No, it's the thing is you'll never do anything that night, you know, like you'll just be in the streets. There's no fucking shit to do because everybody's doing everything in town.
Well, I mean, there's plenty. It's just you're almost like spoiled for choice because people will put up like little carnival attractions and stuff like that. Sometimes there's like big dances, almost of a parade. Salem also has a bunch of like museums, so those become like hot attractions around that time. There is a lot to do.
That's what I'm saying. You aren't getting into a museum that night. You are not.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not happening. You know, like
everyone has the same idea.
It's already
go
hard
earlier.
Yeah.
If you're going to go in October, go like earlier in the month. Like the closer you get to Halloween, the worse it's going to be for you.
The crazier it gets. It's insane. But yes, I feel like you're exactly right. It kind of captures that. You're just like, that's cool. I like that because I feel like that's. There's a lot to love about Halloween, you know, like, you know,
but this is also
dress up, everyone gets candy, but like there's something great about everyone playing pretend together, you know, and just kind of having a good time that has no direct like religious fucking connotations or something like that, you know. Like I know some Christians will be like, well, it's the devil's, and you're just like, no buddy, I'm here for I'm here for the spooky, but like, come on, let's be real. You know, like, cause you're like let's come on get over
I mean, wait till you tell them that Christmas is just Yule, just redressed, so the Christians wouldn't be mad.
They're like, hey, no, that's war on Christmas propaganda. That's what I hear. But
I ain't never saying happy holidays because I'm just stubborn that way.
Yeah.
But this is also a good segment to bring up because it's the one that really starts to bring like, all these stories are interconnected in a big way.
Yes.
You get subtle nods before, like maybe the characters will like bump into like, they just bumped into the characters from that short, and we know where this takes place in the.
This movie is so loved by like at a cult status at like like at the Spencer's Gifts like Hot Topic level of love that this movie gets is that it is connected, and I feel like people feel smart when the things come together like that, you know, like even though they did no work, it's something where like the audience feels smart because it came together, like, and it's kind of like that unifying feeling is what I think kind of happens with this movie, is that like Creepshow doesn't try to connect all the stories. It's just like, nah, there's 5.
Yeah, it has a framing device, but it's still just like, this is specifically stories from this comic book. They don't really tie together other than the fact that it's from this comic that this kid was reading. Where it's like, this all takes place on the same night. Depending on the segment, it's at different points during the night, and they all connect in some way. It's all just like reconnecting stuff.
And I think it does a little, it does a little like time shuffling. I think there's, and I think that's why the audience feels smart. They're like, this happens there, that happens there. Can you even keep up with?
And it also like works to pay off.
It's the same thing as the people who thought they were smart because of Inception. You're just like, no, it's not, guys. This isn't deep. You know, like this isn't. This isn't deep. It's just you gotta keep up, you know. Like I'm just like, like you're just like, what the fuck? And
the whole the first hour of Inception is all like exposition to be like, this is what the concept is. This is how it's gonna work. It's basically a heist movie. Inception is a heist movie, and the whole point is that setup to be like, this is how the heist is gonna go. Obviously, shit's gonna go wrong. But it's just a heist in the dream space. It ain't that complicated. And don't get me wrong, it's not a knock against Inception. I love Inception. It's still my favorite Nolan. Yeah. But, you know what I mean.
But I'm going to need a guarantee.
Yeah. But this is the one that like has the hard beyond.
Those bro like film guys fell in love is that they're like, oh man, the timelines, like this guy's earlier and this, I'm so smart.
Look, man, you can't control.
Yeah, you are, buddy, but also calm the fuck down. Like, but also at the same time, you got to give credit. A good story coming together well, it resonates with people.
And plus, you can't control that. Like,
yeah,
no matter, even if it attracts the most annoying people, that's not the movie's fault.
Yeah,
most of the time. Sometimes it is.
Sometimes.
But this is the big one, because other than just like, oh shit, they just bumped into those characters, they just bumped into those characters, oh, this ties into like that segment, this is the one where it's like, oh, this acts as a coda for the principal one, because the principal is the one who is stalking Anna Paquin's character.
You're just like, shit. And I think that's I think the connecting stories is what makes this very strong, and why so many people remember this so fondly, even years later.
But
it's like there's movies like VHS and ABC's of Death that have not been as memorable, even though they try to connect them, or they don't try to connect those two.
And that's it's an inconsistency thing too, because again, not all of those are good.
No.
Like I've seen the first 2 VHS movies, and there are like some highlights. Like the siren bit in the first VHS is really good. That's probably the best bit on there, which is why they spun it off into just its own full movie.
Yeah.
But again, not all of them are good. Some are just like, yeah. So few, like, I'm like, oh, we got to nail every single one of these. Each one is important, which is tougher to do when it's just basically a showcase for different filmmakers to kind of come together, which is cool in its own respect, but it's also hard to like keep a consistent like
line.
Yeah,
in direction. And I feel like that's what makes this so strong, is and why Creepshow is so strong, is you have consistent vision from both of them, like, and putting it all together makes Trick or Treat feel even more complete,
And then the last segment before the like epilogue 2, just like Creepshow had, is Sam. We cut to that curmudgeonly neighbor played by Brian Cox, who's like lives next door to the principal, and him just tying into like what he was dealing with around the same time.
Right.
And he's the curmudgeonly, like, no trick-or-treaters, I ain't giving candy out to nobody. And then Sam pays him a visit.
Yes, because
he's not abiding by the rules.
Yeah, he's like, you need to trick or treat. You get tricked if you don't treat, like. And I do love the kind of like hard adherence to the rules, like, and just taking it from being like it could be a prank to being like, no, they'll fucking kill you.
And then it adds as another coda to one of the shorts we've already watched, because we reveal that the curmudgeonly old man was the bus driver.
And you're just like, faw.
It's all connected, man. It's all connected. Pepe Sylvia.
Pepe Sylvia. It's so true, though. They're like, it's all coming together. But I think that's, like the way the Trick or Treat all kind of comes together, as much as I'm kind of like calling out like the stupid fans with that, it's like, it is why this is great.
Yeah, like, it's a very good Halloween-y movie. It's also like, it's one that I can show to friends who are horror averse, but I also don't feel like it's a horror movie for babies. It's not like pop horror. I'm like, no, this has genuine scares, but it's also a good crowd pleaser.
Yes, I agree. I feel like it has teeth. It absolutely does not let go of its teeth. But still you can show it to people who are kind of not.
Yeah, and then it has a nice conclusion that just wraps it up in a bow. Like you have the old man, like, after he's gotten the shit beaten out of him, finally abiding by the rules and giving out candy. And you have, and then he is confronted by the dead kids who we had seen risen up with that trick-or-treating segment to like finally exact their vengeance.
Yeah.
And you also have people arriving home. We finally tie it to like that old couple we see in the beginning, because we actually started at the end of the night when things are wrapping up and winding down. And Sam being like, someone ain't abiding by the rules, time to go get punished. So it all comes full circle.
All comes together. Now, I do love that it all comes together and it's a complete package. We have been promised a sequel to Trick or Treat for a very fucking long time.
Yes.
Trick or Treat 2 has been in development forever.
Trick or Treat is like
away.
Trick or Treat is like Ghostbusters 3 before Afterlife came out.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, we swear there's going to be a Ghostbusters 3. It's like, It's just like, sure, Dan Aykroyd, all right.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that, like, this could be the time we get Trick or Treat 2, because Michael Dougherty's not working on a Godzilla, like, he's not, like...
I wish he was.
Yeah, right, and I'm pretty sure this is the only thing on his list at the moment as coming up next, but I'm not so
also
sure.
At the same time, like, good luck, this is gonna be hard to top.
Yes, yeah, right, like, how do you do a sequel to this?
It's already so hard to have a consistent, like, anthology of horror that's consistently good across the board. Everything ties together. Good luck trying to just like, all right, now do it again.
Oh no, I'm wrong. He is not done with Godzilla. I didn't know he was he's consulting producer on Monarch. Holy shit.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Okay, so that man's busy.
He has been like, not directorial, but he has had his hand a little bit with like the subsequent movies. I wish he would direct one again.
I mean, it's cool that he's on Monarch. We're getting another season of Monarch soon. I need to. That's
yeah. I haven't watched it either.
Yeah, I just need.
You got to get Apple just to watch that and Ted Lasso.
Yeah, exactly. You're
just like binge them and then cancel your subscription.
My YouTube recently, dude. I meant to tell you, my algorithm has been like, I think you'll like Ted Lasso, and it just keeps like feeding me clips, and I'm like, I just sent you a clip. I like it. I know.
I just sent It's funny. I just sent you a clip from Ted Lasso like earlier before we started recording.
The algorithm was like sending it to me before that. Like I don't.
That's so funny.
It's weird. Algorithms being like,
it's a good show. It's a really good show. You know me. I don't give a fuck about. I don't care a fuck about any sport that isn't badminton. Even then, I'm not going to watch badminton. It's the only sport I actually enjoy playing, outside of easy shit like bowling and stuff.
Okay. that makes sense.
Yeah. Different kind of level, like very minimum effort, like bowling or pool or some shit.
Yes. But to get back on track, I think that we could get Trick or Treat 2 soon. It could be the next project that Michael Dougherty works on, or he could just fucking work on something else.
He at least proved with like Krampus and King of the Monsters that him as a director wasn't a fluke, but with Krampus specifically, that him doing horror wasn't just a fluke with that first one, because Krampus is also very good.
Yeah, exactly. And you're just kind of like, yeah, let's keep this man working. Is basically my thing. Is like, I want to see Trick or Treat 2. I want to see what else he's got. But
I'm also, it's like, if it happens, I'll be open to it, but I'm also not going to build it up too much.
Yes, exactly. But dude, Trick or Treat, it's a great movie. It's one of those ones that I try to rewatch every year and have a good time with it. And I think that Creepshow and this are the cream of the crop of the horror anthologies, which like we're starting to switch to just being horror anthology shows, but I feel like it there's still room,
and you can still, and there's still a bunch being made, but they're more on like the obscure side. Like, go to Shudder, you'll find a bunch.
Because the reason why you find a bunch is I feel like it's a launching pad for several directors to work together. So they pool their resources, they pool all their team, their actors, to make 3 movies basically, and then they slap them together. And
sometimes it's not even sometimes it's not even on the indie side. Like, I think like Mike Flanagan has a segment on like the latest VHS.
Really?
Yeah. Really? And it's just like, it's fucking Mike Flanagan. Mike Flanagan has nothing left to prove. He ain't just started out. But it's just like, okay, we could just make this like a collaboration thing, because Shudder's just ran away with the VHS franchise. Like, it is basically theirs now. Like, all the sequels are like Shudder originals now. Which was like, I mean, hey, if it works. And they also got shit like the Mortuary Collection, which is fun, but also, again, not as consistent. Like, you want the 2 best, you got the 2 best with what we've been talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And there's not I was trying to think of Kevin Smith's horror anthology, Holidays. That's the one he did. I haven't seen that one yet. Because I thought that was interesting that he did a horror anthology in 2016. Like, you're just like, okay, like, but I haven't seen it yet. Have you?
I don't think so. No.
Because there's some good directors on there too, so it's an interesting one. But I'll have to check it out sometime soon. But guys, basically, I hope you can fit this into your slots of horror for this month.
Yes.
These two,
and if you're a physical collector, they're worth having on your shelf.
Yes,
I got the Shout Factory box for Creepshow right here. Very good copy. Comes with like a little booklet detailing behind the scenes stuff. Very comic booky. And I got Trick or Treat.
And especially because Creepshow is streaming on Philo. What the fuck is Philo? What the fuck is that? And why is it even like holding on to a movie at all? But I had to buy that one, and Trick or Treat I own already. So it's just like, you're just like, dang, okay. So I would agree. This is a movie. These are movies you want to own because they might not be streaming where you want them to be streaming. And that's
I hope that people are starting
ones.
to get that point more and more as they're getting frustrated with just having to jump from this streaming service to this streaming service to this streaming service if they want to find something specific and not just, browse for something random.
Exactly.
It's very annoying.
And not only would you want these because like they could disappear, but because these are good movies and worth owning and rewatching, because I feel like they're fun. They're fun. You can have fun watching them any time as a rewatch, so definitely worth being on your warped shelf. And definitely, worth a rewatch this October if you got it in you. But guys,
and this was a fun experience, especially because Creepshow was new for you.
Yeah,
you had already seen Trick or Treat.
Yeah, so it's like I definitely liked watching Creepshow, and now
you understand why I kept pushing it. It's just like it's a hole. It's a hole. Yeah. You should watch it.
Yeah, I was really engaged too, and like it was definitely one of those things where I was just like, okay, this is great. I'm like, it was a big hole, so I'm glad I filled it, and I'm excited to. I'm trying this year to fill in a couple horror holes, I can try to get them filled in. We'll see if we can do that. But guys, thank you so much for checking out the Warp Shelf podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can hit the buttons down below, but on any platform, you can hit any of the buttons, make the algorithm do its thing and support us.
Feed the beast, as we say.
That could be nice. But we also, you could check out our podcast on galaxyofgeek.com, where our podcast in every form is living, and you can just check out every episode. Makes it very easy for you to find everything. But if you're either you can listen on any podcast platform or on every podcast platform, or you can watch us on YouTube and see our beautiful faces. And check out Deshaun's
when
shirt.
I show off my shirt or any like physical media I decide to like put up into camera. It's just like I like to collect.
And you get to see our warp shells behind us if you're watching on YouTube. That's another benefit. You get to sit there being like, is that part of an amiibo collection that Frank has up in that corner? And you're like, yeah, that's pretty much all the amiibos. Pretty much. I got almost all of them. Almost, not all.
Is that a weird blend of random assorted pops with a Luke Skywalker hot toy, a statue of Baron Harkonnen from Dune, but also the Mistborn leather bounce?
Right? Yeah, Mistborn leather bounce.
Look, man, I got limited room. Sometimes there's no synergy to it. I just put shit somewhere.
And if you want to support our social medias, I am Yep Frank or Yep Gundam or Yep Fish if you're into fishing, but Yep Gundam if you're into these Gundam models, and Yep Frank if you're into anything I do. That's pretty much anyway.
If only you could trademark Yup.
Yeah, right? Word. Trademark just Yup.
Just like not just Yup. Anyone could use Up, but if it's Yup something as one singular word, you owe me money.
You owe me goddamn money.
Yeah. And I'm Mod Karika pretty much everywhere, most active on Instagram and Threads lately, just because I got the media thread going. Right. I'm like close to like 500 now.
Nice.
Of like shit I've been consuming. That's everything from like if I read a book, I add it. If I watch a season of television, I add it. If I watch a movie, I add it. If I go to a certain event, I'll add it. It's just insane, everything I'm sort of consuming in all sorts of media.
It's insane.
And then as far as And then as far as side projects are concerned, I brought this up on an earlier episode before, but I am still working on that video essay that I had mentioned.
Nice.
I'm actually in the middle of like recording and editing that right now. So like we're kind of like at that final stretch.
Dope. I love that. I'm excited to see it. It's gonna be epic.
Yeah. I'll probably because I'm trying to go for like a separate branding for it, period.
Yeah.
Just for fun.
Yeah,
so I'll probably make its own YouTube channel for it. I just haven't done it yet.
That makes sense to me. Sounds good. All right. Well, we'll be sharing that project when it's up there, so you guys can check that out. And guys, pretty much thank you so much for your support of this show, and we love doing this, and we'll be doing. We might do one more Halloween episode if we can fit it in.
Yeah, I mean that depends on you, not me.
Yeah,
I'm always down. We just got to figure out what to do. But as far as like engagement, also list like some of your favorites. If you have an horror anthology that we haven't seen, or that you think it's consistently good all the way through that you don't think people talk about, then bring it up.
Yeah, please down below put any consistent and not just horror anthology. If you got any anthology movies that is consistent all the way through, put down below. I'd like to check it out. You know, I like a good anthology movie.
Watch horror movies. Watch more.
Movies. Yes.
You're not watching enough. No, you're not.
No. Up that number. All right. Well, thank you guys, and have a great rest of your week. Adios.
We'll see you next time.